Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I welcome you to our webinar and apologize for the couple seconds delay there. But I'm excited to talk about the introduction to data storytelling with Power BI. Now, I'm Patricia Terra, Learning Center Account Manager at System Source. Jon O'Keefe is on with us also. He's the System Source Lead Instructor for Business Intelligence and AI. As we look at the agenda for the next hour here, you can see Jon is going to help us explore AI insights, discover meaningful patterns, correlation, outliers, and trends on your data that you may think otherwise will be missed. At the close of our presentation, Jon will tell you about our hands-on training and open the floor for Q&A. Sorry about that. Before we get too far, I want to let you know if you've ordered pizza and have not received it, email Julie. The email is on the screen, and she will follow up with you directly. Now, thank you. If we can look at this during the webinar, a few housekeeping notes. The session is being recorded. A link will be shared with you all afterward. We encourage you to ask questions and type them in the Q&A box at any time. Jon will address them at the end of our segment and discuss with you all. If you have technical difficulties, please feel free to use the chat feature and our support team will assist you. At the end of the webinar, we'll ask you to do a quick short survey about today's event because we find that your insight is very valuable. For those of you new to System Source, I'd like to briefly acquaint you with our services. Thank you, Jon. Many of our clients come to us asking for help improving their IT operations. Clients may need IT and end user training or classroom to train on their own proprietary systems. Others rely on us for things like presentation rooms, including collaborative conference rooms and classrooms. Many of our clients require the expertise of our IT top consultants who specialize in cloud management, systems management, project management, and infrastructure design. Our team offers a proactive approach with our managed services team. And we also have a reactive approach that uses a dispatch desk to give support. When we help clients with these slight improvements in maintenance, it's more efficient and it can even open up money so that they can acquire new equipment and refresh their existing systems. At System Source, we are dedicated to educating and helping business professionals. And today, as part of the webinar series, I'm excited to share that we can share insights on how we can help with transforming your data and compelling stories into compelling stories. Now, Jon, who has had decades of experience in education and has helped many organizations harness the power of AI to increase productivity, will jump into the introduction to data storytelling. Over to you, Jon.
I'm muted, I'm unmuted. Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome. Let's talk some Power BI. So, as you're probably aware, since you're in a Power BI webinar, Power BI is one of the premier self-service BI tools. Now, when I say self-service BI, what exactly am I referring to here? I'm referring to the ability for an end user who has a little bit of training, being able to take and do both data analysis and data visualization inside of a fairly comprehensive but easy to use software program. If you've never seen Power BI before, well, you're in luck. You're going to get to see it here. If you have used Power BI before, there's likely some things that you may not know necessarily that are going on behind the scenes, both in what we call Power Query, as well as with some additional insights that you can develop when building out your reports and your dashboards. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about data storytelling primarily through the lens of artificial intelligence. Yes, that's right, friends. We're going to let the robots help us here, and we're going to utilize AI to make a bunch of different things happen inside of our inside of Power BI here. So let me go ahead and close down this PowerPoint, which I will come back to later to talk to you about some additional offerings that we have. And let me jump in to our Power BI interface here. Now, as you can see, we've got, and I'm going to go ahead and start up with a blank report inside of Power BI. When you start with a blank report, of course, you have no data, and therefore you can't really do anything inside of Power BI. Now, when we are telling a data story, there's usually two main components to it. The first is understanding and doing analysis of our data. The second is once the analysis is done and we've taken a look at what's going on with the actual data, then we're going to start to build some visualizations. Visualizations will help us in a couple of different ways. They will either help us tell a data story that we've cemented by looking at the data behind the scenes, or they will help us dig through and analyze things that we might not even know are there. Sometimes you'll have an understanding of what the data is already going to tell you, and then you'll find surprises. Other times, you'll be asked a question, you'll have no idea what the answer is, and you'll have to build lots and lots of visualizations in order for to find that answer. But let's go ahead and start here. So for those of you that don't know, this is the Power BI interface. Inside of Power BI, we have the traditional Microsoft Office setup here where we have tabs up top. Each of these tabs takes us to a different ribbon. And inside of each of these ribbons are groups. These groups are where we'll execute commands. So this is really no different than Excel or PowerPoint or any other Office application. You've got tabs, you've got groups inside of ribbons, and you've got commands that you want to execute. Where Power BI does differentiate a little bit is on the left and the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, we have a series of panes. These panes give us the option of viewing data tables that we create with our data, letting us look at building visualizations, letting us look at formatting visualizations and adding in specific things, letting us look at bookmarks or performance and slicers. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, and this is all located on the right-hand side in these panes. On the left-hand side, we have views. These views help us understand and look at our data. For example, here I have a report view, which brings up this blank canvas space where I'm going to build my visualizations. I also have the ability to look at my data once it's been imported in table view, as well as analyze and understand any relationships that exist in my data. Relationships are a critical component of building visualizations inside of Power BI, and I'll show you why that is as we go through here. So first and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab some data. I'm going to load it in, and I'm going to look at some of the insights that are available to me behind the scenes with my data. So I know I want to open some Excel data here. So up in my data tab, I'm going to select in my data grouping Excel workbook. Then I'm going to navigate to where I know that my data is, which is a folder here. And inside of here, I have a couple of different Excel sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up one of my Excel workbooks here. And in this, I get the ability to preview some data. So I can look and see, based on the Excel document, each one of these is a sheet. So this Excel document, My Footprint Sports XLSX, has 3 sheets on it. It has a date table, an orders table, and a sales rep table. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load in my sales rep table. Maybe this is data that I need to load in. When I load it in, I have some options here, and I can go ahead and I can choose to load the data directly in as it is. I can also select transform data. Selecting transform data will open up the query editor. So I'll be able to make some changes to this data without impacting the original data set. Meaning, if I have some issues with my data, I can go in and I can make some changes. So one of the things that you'll have to do for data analysis and understanding the storytelling that you're going to use is when you load in data, you're going to have to determine, does this data set have everything that I need to answer the questions that are being asked of me? So I'm going to select transform data. And now I am in what we call Power Query. You may be familiar with Power Query. It uses the mashup language or M language. It is available inside of Excel, which it can do basically the same thing. And it allows me to manipulate and play around with data as well as do data analysis, including analytics through Azure or vision analytics if there are images present in this. So I can use AI insights on my raw data behind the scenes. Now, when I load in a data set here, I have a bunch of different options, and I can look at, for example, column quality. I can see if everything that is in the column is valid or if there are any errors. I can look at column distribution, and I can look at column profile. So I'm going to go ahead and turn all of these off, and we're going to introduce these concepts one by one. But first, I want you to notice, and it's a little hard to see. I can't zoom in on this, unfortunately. But you can see here that when you load in a data set inside of Power Query, that there's this green bar underneath the column name. And when I see this green bar, I can see that it is not full. As a matter of fact, if I hover my mouse over it, I can see that there are 8 valid entries and there is 1 empty entry there. And that's true. Row number 2 is null data. Now, Power BI hates empties. It doesn't really know what to do with them. It doesn't prefer to operate that way. So when I come in here, I might want to look at my column profile, and I might want to look at my column quality, and I can see here that I've got some issues that I need to deal with to get this data into working shape. The good news is I can do that fairly easily. One of the things that I'm going to want to do here is I'm going to want to get rid of these top 2 rows. They're not really helping me very much. There's a bunch of null data. This is obviously designed to be a table inside of Excel. And so now that I've imported it, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to remove these top 2 rows. I have an option inside of the query edit here to remove the top 2 rows. I'm going to click OK. Now you can see that my errors here have gone to 0, which is exactly what I wanted to achieve. My data here is now in better shape for me to work with it. I'm going to promote row number 1 to be my column headers because Power BI works off of column headers as your selectors for when you're building your visualizations. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab here and say use my first row as headers. Now I'm going to split my sales rep column because the way this was set up in Excel, it appears to have regions and we've got employee names, and I want those to be 2 separate columns. When building data inside of Power BI, the more granular you can get your columns, the better you'll be able to access and build and work with your and work here. So by having the region and the name in one column, it doesn't give me a lot of granularity. It means that I can't analyze by region separately than employee name. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to select split column. I'm going to split it by a delimiter because there is a delimiter here, the dash. Power BI is going to recognize the dash automatically. That's really nice. I don't have to tell it that it's a dash. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to divide these two columns. And so now I have sales rep 1 and sales rep 2. So I can rename these very easily. We're going to rename this here. We're going to call this region. We're going to rename this over here. We're going to call this sales rep. And so now I've got 2 additional columns with which I can perform analysis with. Now, one of Power BI's biggest downfalls is it doesn't like wide data. It prefers narrow data, which means that I have this kind of pivoted data here. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unpivot this data, which is a simple operation. To do that, I just simply select the columns I'd like to unpivot, and I can right-click on a column header and select Unpivot Columns. And now you can see that my data is unpivoted, which gives me the ability to turn this column into a date column and this column into a unit column. Now, Power BI does a really good job of analyzing what types of data is in my columns. It uses AI to do that, so it will recognize if certain types of columns are text or if they're numerical based. Here for the unit column, it is recognized that these are numerical based, and so it's got them set up as whole numbers. If these were decimal numbers, I could change them to that, and then it would provide me with that option. But because I unpivoted this date column, I need to come in and tell it that this is a date. When I do that, it now sets up this column for additional analysis here. Now, if I click on one of these columns, I can look here at the bottom and I can look at my column statistics. My column statistics will show me that there's 72 rows here, that I have 0 empty. There's no errors that are present. I have distinct and unique counts, which is important for cardinality. Cardinality is something that will become important as you learn Power BI or database management. It's basically the direction in which data is flowing and how data relates to one another. There are high cardinality columns and low cardinality columns. Within Power BI, you would prefer a low cardinality column, which means that you have a lot of distinct and unique, and they're different. So here we have a lot of columns here where they share, so they don't share values, and that's expected. Whereas over here, I have no unique columns. So these are all distinct, and all that means is that this data happens more than once, right? WUS happens more than once, EUS happens more than once. That's good. That's ideally the way you want your data inside of Power BI. So now looking here, I'm able to see the value distribution and can see that we have the number 342 appears 3 times. We could sort this data. So we can see that our highest number is 420. Our lowest number is 189, so we can understand the range in which we're working with. So we can do some data things behind the scenes. Now that I've got my data set up the way I would like it, I'm going to click Close and Apply. And now I have a data table here that I can build some visualizations with. So very quickly, I'm going to select region. and I'm going to select unit. Notice next to unit, there is a sigma symbol. This means, by looking at the table view here, that Power BI is automatically going to sum up this data for me, which means that when I'm looking at this here, I'm going to be able to see the total sum of unit by region. So now I have a perfectly built visualization that shows me how our regions are performing. I can also build a second visualization to see how sales reps are performing with their unit count here. So I can, from this simple data set, now build two easy to use visualizations. I want to show you behind the scenes inside of Excel that while I've manipulated that data, where is my Excel here? This is the original Excel document. You can see that the original Excel document has not been changed. So now we can, using Power BI, import from an Excel or an Access database or any other type of information, and we can, using insights that are provided to us through Power BI, through the use of artificial intelligence behind the scenes, we can manipulate and set up this data so it can be in working format, and we can start to build visualizations here. So now I can track how my sales reps are performing here, and I can see how we're performing by region. And then, of course, the third one might be date. And then I might want to know how we're doing per date. And because Power BI automatically, when it sees a date table, creates a hierarchy, I can drill down and I can track our sales per date. So just like that, I have three quick visualizations. Now, one of the biggest challenges that you're going to face when you're building stuff inside of Power BI as an organization or as an individual is that eventually you're going to become very, very familiar with the data that you're working with. This can happen, if you're staring at the data all day, or as you're building out these visualizations and you start to interrogate them and start to look here, and very quickly I can see that I have some questions that I want to ask immediately about performance in the Eastern US and the Western US, as well as performance going from July into October. Because as we can see, we have a large data spike that goes into Q4 from Q3, and we have the EUS and the West US are much larger in terms of the performance here. I don't see as much of an interest here in sales reps, although it is pretty obvious that both Sharon and Timothy are underperforming compared to the other 4 sales reps, but maybe that's not something I'm as interested in. Now, I might want to highlight this information for the person who's going to view this. So I have a couple of different ways of doing that. The first is I can insert a text box. Yes, a good old-fashioned text box here inside of Power BI. What that will enable me to do is I can set up and I can write out analysis points here. So sometimes when you're building a visualization or you're building a page of visualizations, you might want to include some additional information that your boss or whoever is going to look at this might need to understand what they're looking at. Because remember, when you're building this stuff, it's very easy for you to see patterns and see trends and see things that make sense. But people who are just freshly looking at this might not necessarily understand what it is that they're looking at. So here I could very easily type in, we should investigate what is going on in Q4 in terms of units sold. We should also do additional analysis on EUS and WS versus CUS and SUS due to performance issues in the central and south regions. So I could spend a lot of time. I could write up a really kind of long-winded analysis. I could include other additional visualizations here. But one thing that I might want to do is, instead of writing my own narrative here, I might want to let Power BI do it for me. And believe it or not, Power BI has AI visuals that it can use here. The first is what we call a smart narrative. I'm going to click on smart narrative here. And with smart narratives, if you have access to Copilot, you can use a Copilot preview, and Copilot will analyze the data both behind the scenes and present in your visualizations, and it will produce text results for you. You can also select custom, and then AI modules that are built into Power BI will run on your data. And here it will create a narrative for me automatically. Sum of unit trended up, resulting in a 15.8% increase between January and October. Sum of units started trending up in January, rising by 15.8% in 3 quarters. Sum of unit jumped from 5,312 to 6,152 during its steepest incline between January and October. So we can see that our biggest increase was about 800 here. At 7,125, EUS had the highest sum of units, which was 81% higher than South US. So not only are we getting kind of basic analysis, we're also getting percentile analysis. EUS had the highest sum of units, followed by EUS accounted for 32% of the sum of units. Across all 4 regions, sum of units ranged from 3,928 to 7,125. So Power BI can automatically create smart narratives for you. These smart narratives are based on the visualizations that are on the screen. Now, because Power BI is interactive when we're building these reports, this means that I can, for example, select EUS here. And when I select EUS, what I am shown in the other visualizations, because they have relationships with one another, is that my data will change here. You can see that this went down from 7,000 down to 1,900. So now I'm just looking at EUS. You can also see that down here that I have Larry and Sharon. Those are probably my EUS sales reps. But what's really great about this is, as we interrogate our data, my smart narrative changes. Furthermore, if I would like to create an interactive experience for the person who is viewing this, then what I can do is use something called a bookmark. Bookmarks allow me to create a journey for my audience. And for data storytelling, this can be really helpful. So what I will do here is I will add a bookmark when my view here is completely reset. There's no filters applied, nothing has been selected, my AI narrative is here. So I will add a bookmark for this, and I will call this original state. Then I am going to select EUS. And I'm going to add a second bookmark. I'm going to call this EUS. Then I'm going to select South US, and I'm going to add a bookmark calling this SUS. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select Randy. And add a bookmark called Randy. Now, when I select View, at the bottom of my screen, I get a bookmark view bar, which means that rather than interrogate this data on their own, my boss can come in and simply navigate through my bookmarks. So this is our original state bookmark. When I click over here, it automatically updates to the EUS bookmark. It automatically updates to the South US, and then it automatically looks at Randy here. So I can navigate through there. Another thing that I can then, if I really want to get fancy, is I can add what we call a bookmark navigator. A bookmark navigator bar can be built into your visualizations. So all you have to do is control click through here, and you can navigate through your bookmarks as well. So now I've got AI insights on my page, visualizations built with some insights from behind the scenes using data analysis, and I have my bookmark bar ready for my boss to navigate through. But I would really like it if my boss was able to also ask some questions of the data. So I'm going to input a Q&A box here. Q&A is another type of visualization that we can use here that has AI insights. And so when I click in here or type a question in, what is the average units in the EUS? And so using natural language, I can ask questions of my data. What is our total unit count? So that's how many units we sold. Which rep had the most units? Randy Wilson had the most units. So now I have made this incredibly easy for someone to use. They can come in if they want to, and they can click and interrogate, and my automatic text will change. They can navigate through these bookmarks, and my text will change. They can also ask questions here, such as average unit, and they can get a visualization, which, by the way, they can then add to the report. So now the Q&A box becomes a visualization that's been added in. So this gives me a lot of options when it comes to building some things out with AI. So inside of Power BI, I have some AI visuals that I can use. We also have key influencers and decomposition trees. So we can go ahead and we can interrogate our data in a variety of ways. I'm going to open up a PIBX file. A PIBX file contains both the data behind the scenes as well as any visualizations that I might have built. And I want to talk about using AI in a different way here. So on the right-hand side, I can see that I have a bunch of different data queries that have come in. And when I look over here at my sales orders in my table view, I can see that I'm capturing order IDs, order dates, shipping method, customer ID, product ID, quantity, sales, profit, shipping cost, days to ship. We're going to go ahead and we're going to delete this column, and I'm going to show you how we can build it. So oftentimes when you import data into Power BI, what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with data that has some analysis done to it that was done maybe in Excel or in Access or whatnot, but you're going to want to ask, you know, certain questions of our data here. So for example, how long is it taking us to ship things? What is the cost, right? Because we have sales, we have profit, we have shipping cost, but I don't have like a cost column here. So how can I build those things? Well, one of the ways in which you can build them is utilizing something called DAX. So I can come into a data table over here, like sales orders, and I can say I would like to build a new column. And inside of this column, I can use some language in order to create additional columns or conditional columns or additional measures that we might want to use. The problem is if I don't know a lot of DAX, then I'm kind of in trouble here. So let's use AI in order to do that. I am going to use a website that I use frequently and I also teach classes on called chatgpt.com. You may or may not have heard of this. Inside of ChatGPT, I can ask it questions about how to do things inside of DAX. So I'm going to say, I need to create a new column in a table in Power BI. It needs to calculate how many days something took to ship. I have an order date column and a ship date column. The table is called sales orders. And so utilizing ChatGPT, it's going to walk me through how to build this. So I can copy this DAX expression and paste it in and now I have a days to ship column. So here is my days to ship column that I set up. I can, of course, edit this if I want it to look a little bit nicer. I can change the name of it here. But just like that, I was able to do that. Let's calculate cost. Let's do the same thing and calculate cost. I'd like to calculate costs next, I have a sales column and a profit column. So I can go ahead and I can copy this DAX formula straight out of ChatGPT. I can select new column, paste it in. Oops. And now I have a cost column where we're taking the sales column and we're subtracting it from the profit column. I can come in and I can change this data type to be currency. And we'll go ahead and we'll give it 2 decimal places. Now I can build a visualization where we take a look at order date, and then we take a look at sales, we take a look at cost, and we take a look at profit. And so now we can build a visualization where we can analyze these things. So over here, I can see how much we sold in 2020. I can see how much what it cost us to do that, and then our profit there. So I can use AI to help me build conditional columns. Next, what I'm sadly missing here, and if I look at my relationship view, what I'm sadly missing is a date table. I really don't have a way of analyzing dates. Now, there are some date columns that exist here, but one of the easiest things that you'll do inside of Power BI is you'll have a date table. Now, I do have a date table that is present inside of Excel. So I could load this date table in, and then I could analyze my data by the day, the month num, which will aggregate everything that happens in January and everything that happens in a specific year. But if I don't have a date table, one of the things I can do is I can build a date table utilizing DAX. And as you guessed it, I'm going to use ChatGPT to build a date table for me. I need a date table for Power BI. Please build a date table that contains dates from 1/1/2019 to 12/31/2025. I would like a month num column and a quarter column. Now, one of the things that Power BI will generally do is it recognizes Q1 through Q4, right? And Q1 is January through March, and then, whatever, March through June, or whatever the quarters are. But not every business operates on that quarterly system. Some businesses have their own methods of explaining quarters. The federal government, for example, their Q1 starts on October 1st. So I'm going to tell it Q1 starts on October 1st. And now it's going to go ahead and it's going to build me the DAX code to create a custom date table. Look at all this code here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit copy. I'm going to come into Power BI here and I'm going to hit New Table. I'm going to paste in that date code and I'm going to hit Enter. And now I have a date table here. I'm going to go back into this visualization here and I'm going to remove the order date and I'm going to use the month num from our date table. Now notice here that it doesn't work because my date table has no relationship currently with anything. There's no lines being drawn here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a relationship by simply dragging and dropping. I'm going to click OK, save. Now we have a relationship. And now I can see here that my data is tracking. So now this is aggregating my sales data per month for me, 1 being January, 2 being February, 3. And now I'm tracking data as it performs over time in each month. And now my analysis is telling me something here. By using some AI and building some date tables, I've been able to go ahead and look here, and I can see that we have something going on in between August and September, and then from October to November, because most of our data is pretty flat. And I can actually go into this visualization and we can put in a trend line so we can see here that our data is fairly flat. But we do tend to obviously increase sales towards the end of the year. But this big old dip is something that we've got to analyze and understand. So through the use of artificial intelligence, I'm able to then go ahead and come into my insert here. The reason this visualization is broke is because it's trying to use there we go. Now I could go ahead and, of course, I could insert a narrative here. And so now, again, I have the narrative based on the two visualizations here. As a matter of fact, I can click on a product name and I can see when it was sold, how much they paid for it, etc. I could click on a customer ID. I could see individual units here. And I can get my analysis. I could also, of course, open up a Q&A box and do that. So we'll have Q&A. When you are in dashboards, which I will publish to right now, I can set up and use custom Q&A inside of the Microsoft Fabric. So behind my scenes, in my workspace, I can look at a semantic model. Oh, I want the semantic model here. And I can go to Q&A. I can turn Q&A on or off, and I can also customize the Q&A questions. So I could input questions that I want people to see when they use Q&A online. So this is where we upload our reports and we can build dashboards from them. If I look inside of my workspaces here, I can see that I have dashboards. And when I click on questions about my data, the AI will prepare a bunch of these different questions. When I click on a question, it will then create a visualization for me. You can customize these questions by coming into your semantic model, and then in settings, under Q&A, we can add featured questions. So maybe there's something you want people to ask. It might be which product sells the most. Now that that's applied, when I look at my dashboard and I exit my Q&A and I click on my Q&A, the first suggested question is the questions that I input there. So I can use AI Insights inside of the Power BI fabric, and I can set up AI Insights to direct questions. So that way, when my boss builds a dashboard, they can then come in and set up and customize these questions. Now, all of the stuff that I've showed you today, plus 1,000 things more, you learn how to do in the Power BI classes. Right? This is just a primer of what you can do utilizing AI, both inside of Power BI, using the AI analytics behind the scenes in Power Query to help you analyze and understand which of your data needs to be manipulated and updated. Also inside of the report view by setting up Q&As, as well as the automatic insights, and then utilizing programs like ChatGPT or other Gen AI, including Microsoft Copilot, to help you write DAX expressions so you can examine your data even further. Okay, folks, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to turn it back over to the team. And I'm going to put that PowerPoint back up, and we're going to talk about some of the classes we have, and then we'll answer any questions you guys might have had during the presentation.
Thank you, John.
Back to you guys.
All great information. And we do have a couple questions, so I will just talk about this briefly. System Source has open enrollment schedule with over 3,000 different classes. We have Power BI courses among them, very popular, fill very quickly. They don't cancel. Great options for individuals, small groups in need of training, or maybe you have people on your staff that you want to train in a group setting or perhaps customized to a business case. We can do that too. What you see here is special enrollment pricing that we have right now if the registrations are placed in the next 2 weeks. Keep in mind, if you have a group of 6 people or more, we can individually price that per event. And again, add questions and questions to the Q&A section if you have any questions. I will touch briefly because I want to make sure that we have and touch those questions that we have. Power BI Professional and Practitioner, great 2 courses, same first 2 days. Now the 3rd day in Professional is for those with a paid BI license because there's those additional features in that. Regarding the Power BI dashboard in a day, think of it like the other 2 courses on steroids. It really dives deeper. And here, people with experience may want to jump directly into this, which is great. We find that people often stage it out, which is fine. Personally, for me, I know staging them out makes it a lot easier because then I'm not drinking from a fire hose. But that's my personal intake. Now, regarding Power BI course, you want to dive deeper into data analysis expressions, the DAX course. That's Power BI's secret sauce, using formula language that you can bend at your will, the bridge between the tables and the slick visuals you're building. Upon completing the evaluations for today, we have areas where you can put in any open enrollment training, Power private group you want, or information on licensing. We can help with you that. And I'm thanking you all in advance to complete those evaluations. Now, let's jump over to the Q&A questions. John, I can read the question, but you're going to need to answer it. Isn't Microsoft Copilot ChatGPT with Microsoft integration?
That is correct. ChatGPT, well, it's not fully correct because they do have a diverging fork in their stack, but for the most part, ChatGPT and Copilot are the same thing. They do have different prompting limits. They do have different guidelines for what is considered acceptable. ChatGPT is a standalone operation that you can integrate into software programs using plugins, whereas Copilot is automatically integrated into most of the Microsoft applications. There is a difference in which their default responses are. Copilot tends to have a more serious response, whereas ChatGPT is what we call temperature, or the way in which it responds tends to vary more. Both of these are controllable in through the interface, but as a default selector, they are basically the same thing, but there are minor differences if you're a big AI user that you would notice. Same thing with Gemini, same thing with Claude, same thing with Grok, same thing with whatever the Facebook one is called. They're all built on this GPT architecture, which is a way of analyzing and understanding context through language placement.
The other two questions, Ying has left the message, but where's the narrative located? And she said she didn't have it on. I'm actually making an assumption. I apologize if Ying is not, but does not have it on her Power BI desktop.
So the narratives are located under the Insert tab under AI Visuals. Narratives are located there. Depending on the version of Power BI you're using, you might have to go into your options and settings, under options, and then I believe you can turn narratives on or off, but there's also preview features here. So you might need to come in and you might need to check to make sure that it's selected here under preview features. Your organization may have also locked it out, but the narrative is right here on the Insert tab under AI Visuals, along with Q&A, decomp trees, and key influencers.
Perfect.
It's also, I believe, in the visual pane here. Yes, under AI Visuals. You can find it here or under the build pane over here.
All right. We are on the hour mark, and I want to thank everyone again for attending. John, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Any insight on the evaluations is always appreciated. So thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a wonderful day, folks.